Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Rise. I'm your host, Bridget Howard. Joining me today is former Major League Baseball player and current FOX Sports Analyst, Mark Sweeney. Mark, so glad you could join us today.
Oh, Bridget, thank you for having me on. When you texted me to try to get me on, I was like, oh, I would love to. This is exciting, and I love this podcast ability to be able to get your stories out, which is really cool.
Definitely. And you're no stranger to the podcast game, and we'll talk about your current podcast here in a little bit. But, you're the first professional athlete turned broadcaster on The Rise. And I'm really interested to hear more about your journey and, kind of talk about it for any athletes who are listening to show what that transition can be like from the field to the booth or, behind the mic after your playing days.
Yeah, it's interesting, Bridget. We always wonder what our story is. And I was the player first to go back. I was the player that was dying to play a day in the big leagues. And I think a lot of us are at that stage. And sometimes I don't think a lot of players want to admit that. But I wanted one day in the big leagues. And then it turned into 14 years. So what that meant to me was achieving my goals. But also the beauty of it is the people that you meet. And you're around the game. There's so many people like the clubhouse staff, the managers, the coaches, people that connect to you, that make you a better person, make the experience so much better. I'm not one of those guys that talks about individual exploits. It was really about my teammates in so many things. So at the end of my career, and you could even say, not my 14th year, but even my 10th year, I was starting to figure out, what am I going to do next? And I think the ability to figure out how you're going to give back to the greatest game that gave you so much was the biggest thing for me to try to answer. So I eventually, my last years were in the Los Angeles Dodgers uniform, which was iconic and unbelievable. But I had to figure out what was next. And the GM at the time was Ned Colletti. And Ned Colletti basically created a position for me to be on a staff and be an added coach and be a special assistant to the GM. And I was grateful for that, because when you're finished playing, it's either you get out of the game or you stay in the game. And I got to stay in the game because of Ned Colletti. And the reason for that, it gave me an opportunity later down, and 4 years later, I got an opportunity to be with FOX Sports San Diego. Jeff Bile was the executive producer coming in, and I got to do broadcasting, put makeup on, get an earpiece. There's so many aspects that we can talk about, but I didn't know.
A lot different than putting on a uniform, right?
Right. Putting a uniform on was a struggle at times too, because you're just wondering, do I really belong in this uniform? Am I good enough? Am I worthy to put a Dodger uniform on or a Padre uniform on or everything else? But I had an opportunity to go into the broadcasting, and it was trying, but I was excited and motivated to see if I loved it. And I fell in love with it. It's been 10 years and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, like you mentioned, in 2012, you decided to make that jump. How were you able to get that ball rolling and get started in broadcasting?
It was interesting. So I get a phone call, and it's from people that were with the San Diego Padres. And they said, FOX Sports is going to come in and go from a local TV network that covered the Padres, Channel 4 Padres, to FOX Sports. So the regional came in and wanted to figure out who was going to be on their broadcast. So I had to meet with Jeff Bile. I was in spring training with the Dodgers. I literally had a meeting with him at a local restaurant. And he and this other guy, Max Michalak, his associate, was basically telling me how it all worked. We're looking for a pregame analyst. We're looking to for your expertise, are you willing to do this? So now my thoughts start going, do I have to do an audition? What's gonna entail with that? All of these aspects go through my mind. And we had a great meeting. We talked for about an hour and a half about baseball aspects, things that we want to transition into. So the next morning, I'm in a Dodger uniform again. We have spring training, and I'm out in the field, and we come in for a meeting. and it's like a 3-hour meeting to go over every single player in the minor leagues. So it's an elaborate meeting. We're discussing all these things. And all of a sudden I go down after that meeting and I have a conversation on my phone. And it says, Mark, they want you to do 120 games for Fox Sports. And I said, wait a minute. I just met with these guys the day before. How do they know that can even do it on air? And Jeff Bile basically offered me 120 games. It ended up being 140 games, which was great. But I was just thrilled that I got to do it wherever I lived. I live in San Diego, and what a great opportunity it was for me.
Let's go back to that first game you ever did for Fox Sports San Diego. What was that initial experience and learning curve like for you?
Bridget, I'm starting to sweat now thinking of it because I was so nervous. All the executives from Big Fox were coming down because this was a new region for San Diego, and they were so excited. So Jeff Bile, the executive producer, basically he was a guy's guy, but he didn't back off from putting pressure on you, which I absolutely love. I love the pressure aspect of it. But I was getting into a realm that I had no idea. Like I said, the makeup, the earpiece, people talk in your ear. We had an hour pregame show for opening day, and I know how important opening day really is, but I didn't know this side, and we couldn't mess up. So it was important for them to launch, and you could understand the importance of how important everyone from Fox coming down. I don't remember a word I said. I don't remember any aspect of it. Kind of like your debut as a player. You just go numb to it. But I was thrilled that I had an opportunity to do it. It almost felt like college game day for your listeners. College game day is so elaborate and so many great things. We had this big stage. I'm sitting on it. We have Trevor Hoffman, the Hall of Famer, coming out. We had so many people that were part of that big stage that was on, and it was so much fun. But afterwards, my parents were there. I remember going to this party and I wanted to just sleep. I wanted to just go to bed because I was mentally exhausted from that opportunity.
Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about broadcasting and the fact that, especially for athletes, they're like, well, the sport, it's easy, just talk about it. But when you take a step back and you're in that seat talking about it, no one hears the directors and everyone talking in your ear. You're simultaneously trying to talk while listening to someone else. You're trying to follow the rundown. Like there's so many different aspects. What was that adjustment like for you? How did you get used to that?
Yeah, well, the rundown was French to me. You're looking at so many things. You have no idea what you're looking at. You see some words that make sense to you, but you really don't know what's going on, whether it's video or there's certain aspects that they tell you that it's not really coming to you. The one thing that I will say, most players, baseball players, have been interviewed so many times. So you know how to answer questions. You don't know how to basically describe what you're seeing in an easier pace. The one thing that I think Jeff Bile resonated with me, which is really important, he said, when you think you're a level 5 or an 8 as a voice or the way you're speaking, you're really coming in at a 5. So it seems like you're not projecting your voice. And that got me nervous because I'm thinking, I'm just going to talk. I'm just going to be able to talk. And you sound monotoned, which really is one of those things that you have to learn. And the beauty of it, Bridget, was I had a professional next to me. His name is Mike Pomeranz, who is fabulous at his work. We've been together for 10 years. We're good friends. We love each other. But I learned from him. And it's so funny because that's what we did in baseball. We learned from the best. We learned from the elite because not that you're going to be those people, but you can learn certain aspects that are so great. He has a projectable voice, and Mike is brilliant at what he does, but also he doesn't fill things. He says things in condensed form, and he has the ability to just connect with the listeners. I think that's something that we're always trying to do, but that first day and being able to be next to a professional that felt comfortable in his own skin and being able to do it was a huge benefit to me.
I think that's such a unique aspect of this industry is that you have, the professionals that come up just focusing on broadcasting. And then you have the athletes that make that transition and you learn so much from one another. You both have so much to bring to the table. And that's what I think makes so many of the broadcasts nowadays so much more interesting. And, they involve the fans more because you get both aspects.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating because we have a unique ability, which Mike Pomeranz played minor league baseball. He also did news, and he's been very successful in other genres other than sports. So I think that helped because he has the ability, also covered 9/11, by the way, when he was in New York City and spent, I think it was 14 or 15 days. I don't want to get the story wrong, but 15 days in the city while 9/11 happened. Craziness. So you start thinking about when times are the toughest, he's at his best. And that's what I get from him. But he also has the ability to talk baseball and have the language that you're supposed to use, and also ask questions. Where am I going to be? And he always said to me, Bridget, which I think is fascinating, he said, my job is to put the baseball on a batting tee and let you hit it out of the park. That was his message to me when we first started working. And to this day, he still does it. He still has the ability to not only be a best friend, be a mentor to me, but he has the ability to connect with everyone. And that connection is something that you work towards. I believe as an analyst, you have to teach. Mike is teaching me. I have to connect with the fan and have the ability to describe why that home run was hit or why that strikeout pitch was thrown, or how many aspects of baseball can you teach in a fan base that's passionate about their players, but they're wondering, why is Fernando Tatis so good? And I have to answer those questions, but Mike sets it up in a way that is almost easy to be able to communicate to the viewer.
Well, you kind of mentioned it there. You have all the different perspectives, right? You've been on the field, you've been in the front office, you understand all the different perspectives. So how do you use all of those to contribute in unique ways to the broadcast so that, the average fan can understand what's going on?
Well, Bridget, it's funny, and it's a great question. I spent most of my career in the 14 years over the railing and watching the game. And why I say that is that I was a utility player. I was a pinch hitter. So that was my job at the end of the game or middle to the end of the game. I had to prepare myself to get ready for one opportunity. And typically that was my job predominantly my whole career. So why I say that is when I was over the railing, I watched everything. I watched my teammates' reactions to failures. I watched my teammates' ability to come up clutch in the bigger moments. I watched the opposition and how they presented their game. So I try to take the fan into that aspect. If you're sitting in the dugout, why are things happening? So you start creating ways that you can describe it in a way where it's teaching. But also, I always put this in perspective because it goes back to Jeff Bile, my boss. He said, you got to act like there's an 8-9-year-old watching the game. You have to also touch where there's a grandfather that's known the game of baseball for so long, and he has the ability to know more than you do. So how are you presenting the same analysis on a situation? So I try to blend all of that together. We're still learning, and I'm still learning to be able to do that. But I absolutely love the game of baseball, and hopefully that resonates with a fan that's watching the game.
Well, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but for so many years, you had been the interviewee. You understood,
Right.
what was going to be asked of you. And now you get the opportunity to sometimes be in the seat of the interviewer. So how does that change your mindset when you're going into an interview? Because I'm sure you experienced, the reporters that didn't quite know what was going on, who would ask you questions. So how does that change your mindset when trying to connect with the players and coaches and knowing when and how to ask the right questions?
Well, first, I always remember this too. It's not an easy job. Even when I was a player and I was being asked a question, I think it's the respect of what people are doing and what they're trying to get to. So always understand it might not sound the greatest of a question, but you understand what you're trying to describe. I always take that in my mind because I've done some interviews, and as soon as we're done, I'm bashing myself and saying, "What did you just say? How did you present it?" Because there's a way of asking questions that you can ask them in a longer way, and it sounds like you're answering for them. So I've had to learn those aspects of being able to ask certain questions, be able to resonate with that person that you're interviewing. But typically, every time I'm interviewing, these are guys I know. So I want to personalize it. I don't want to make it numbers because the numbers in the game of baseball or sports are getting way overblown. I want to personalize it because I believe that person should resonate with the listeners and the viewers. They should say what they really are, because I always was wondering about this as a player. I don't want fans to think we're robots, because we're not. We're regular people. We fail, we struggle, we have successes, we express ourselves. I want to get that out of the person that I'm interviewing, and somehow that is something that always resonates with me. I want a personal side that some fan goes, "Man, I love that guy because not only is he good at what he does, but he's a real man, a real woman." The ability to connect with a listener or a viewer is very important to me.
Absolutely. That's what, gets you invested in the sport so many of
Mm-hmm.
times, is because you see a story, maybe whether it be on Twitter or Instagram, and you're like, wow, that's so cool. I know
Mm-hmm.
I was just watching the Freddie Freeman documentary on E60
Incredible.
yesterday, and I'm like, wow, I love this guy. Like,
Yeah.
and just, when I see him now in a game, I'm going to be like, have so much more respect for him. Not that, you don't before, like they're a Major League Baseball player, but it just gives you a way of connecting with players. So I think that's really cool that you as a broadcaster realize that, and especially like as a former athlete, realize how important it is to bring the personalities out of the players and show, hey, there's more to me than just the game.
Yeah, it's important, Bridget. And one of the stories that I always remember, it was a former player. His name is Chris Denorfia, and he was a fourth or fifth outfielder, but played on the Padres for a while. And they had an important game one night, and he made a bad play in right field. And why I say this is that after the game, he was seeking out our sideline reporter to answer a question and say, "I messed this game up. I want to come on, and could you have me on?" A lot of players don't do that. They just run and hide because they failed. And it's a failure, and it's also a disappointment that some people don't know how to understand. So Chris Denorpheus seek our sideline reporter out, and he ends up having an interview. And I'm listening to it for the first time on our desk, and I heard it, and I went up the next day and I said, "Hey, Chris, thank you for doing that." And it was the player in me, because I went up and I said, "Chris, you just made yourself a human to a lot of listeners. Someone that's going out there watching the game and they're disappointed that their home team lost, but he became real to them." And I said, "You know what? A lot of people don't like talking about failures, but you made yourself so much more relevant to a fan." And I loved it. And whatever he took my message as, I just love the fact, because some people, especially in this game, they want to run from that so much, and I think they miss the connection of a fan, because the fans are passionate about their team winning, and they sometimes don't get the full story of what that humanation is really all about. And I think that was one of those scenarios that I always try to keep in mind, because this was about 7 or 8 years ago, and I still remember like it's yesterday.
It's those stories that stick with you and
Hmm.
make you a better broadcaster, but also just make you connect with the fans and the players that much
Right.
more. Let's take a moment to talk about Sage, our sponsor for Season 2 of The Rise. For many of us who are on air, finding pieces that are both stylish and affordable are sometimes hard to come by. This season, The Rise is sponsored by Sage, an online boutique that is dedicated to helping women find looks that help you accomplish your life goals while feeling confident and looking great. Use the code THERISE20 for 20% off your next purchase at shopsage.com, and make sure to follow at ShopSage on Instagram for updates on new arrivals and more. So in 2014, you took broadcasting a step further and joined FS1 as an analyst for MLB Whiparound. What was the biggest change for you going from a regional broadcast to the national stage?
What an honor it was. I pinched myself because I remember as a player, I was a pinch hitter. I wasn't a regular. I wasn't an all-star caliber player. And I'm sitting there next to Frank Thomas and Eric Karros and Nick Swisher, Dontrell Willis, all of these big, huge personalities, but also tremendous players. So, and here I am looking to my right, and Kevin Burkhardt is our host, and brilliant. And I think the listeners will understand that name. He does a lot of World Series. He does the pre and post game show. He does a fabulous job because he connects everyone's personality, and there's big personalities on that desk. But to answer your question, Bridget, I was so thrilled I had an opportunity to do that. There's so many people I could thank to just get an opportunity and be a fill-in and be an extra, which has always been my life story. It's just an honor to go there. So what you have to worry about is you're on the big stage and you can't mess up. So those are the thoughts that you have in your mind. But man, I've tried to just realize that it's still talking baseball. It's still being able to connect in how you're answering certain things. Was I nervous? Yes. The difference was we had wardrobe person, so they matched everything. So I felt like I was wearing the right stuff. But also we had makeup artists who are brilliant in what they do. So I usually do my makeup here in San Diego, putting it on, and I have a big, huge bald head, so I got to worry about that. So I always apologize to our makeup people up in LA because it took a long time to get this right. So
you're like, it's more than just a face. You got a lot more to cover here.
And cover up a lot of those blemishes and stuff like that. But man, I say this, Bridget, it was and continues to be an honor to do something nationally. And Fox is a family. I've always felt very comfortable, whether it's the directors, the producers, so many people put in time, they're statisticians that make us sound like we know what we're talking about. There's a lot that goes into it that is just so fabulous. And you realize it's on the biggest stage, and you know that this is something that is a lot of people's dreams. I never lose sight of that because I am very honored. I can't say lucky because you work hard at what you do, but I'm very fortunate.
My favorite quote that I've heard is "luck favors the prepared." And I think that's a really good point to make because, you may be going to that next level, but you've prepared, you know your content, you know what you're talking about. So it's just a different camera you're looking at, so to say.
It's so true. And you know what? The difference is that when we do a local broadcast, we have the stage manager that points us and we have to look into the camera. At Big Fox, you're just talking because you're at a desk and you want it to be that casual, having a cup of coffee, having a beer or whatever. It's really something that is conversational. And I go back to Kevin Burkhardt. Kevin Burkhardt allows you to be your personality, and it really is a lot of fun. I am just honored when I get on that set that I'm sitting next to Frank Thomas, the Hall of Famer. All of these guys that are so good at what they do. I just love hearing their perspective, and I love being a little fly on the wall and being able to be there with them.
Well, you know the game inside and out. Obviously, you lived it. What does preparation for a broadcast look like for you as opposed to just, a sideline reporter or another broadcaster?
I think it's a lot of reading, a lot of awareness, because sometimes when you're in a region and you're covering the San Diego Padres, you get tunnel vision where you're thinking about the Padres and their opponent. I love the game of baseball. I love reading about it. I love watching highlights. Who doesn't, right? The home runs, the strikeouts, everything, the talent that is in the game. So I try to convey that passion for what I love the game of baseball. And you can't minimize whether it's the Detroit Tigers that are in last place or it's the great story of the Boston Red Sox coming on and playing as well as they are. So you have to have the ability to know the game of baseball, but also resonate on so many different things. The one thing I'll say, Bridget, and it's so crazy how nervous we get, it's the names. And if you mess up their names, I think of their parents going, you're messing up my son's name. You, you got to get that right. So that's the reason why reading and also hearing broadcasters pronounce certain names and certain things, you don't want to mess those up. You want to have the ability to connect that moment to someone that's watching that understands they're connected to it as well.
Well, I kind of want to take a step back from broadcasting a little bit because you've got a family at home, your wife and 3 kids. We often get the perspective from women on how to handle the work-life balance because this is such a demanding industry and it's hard. There's, like you said, you're doing 140 games. That's a lot of nights at the ballpark. So what's helped you as a dad keep that balance because it is such a demanding field?
Well, the beauty of it is that if I'm up in Los Angeles, it's only 2 hours away, but predominantly I'm here in San Diego, and I have the ability to be in the game I love and broadcast, but also I come home most nights. I'm able to connect with my family, and why I say it's important. My wife takes on so much, especially during the season, and we have our off time in the off season that I start taking on more responsibilities, more roles in our family. But she is really the rock. And it starts with her. It starts with the ability to know that our kids are safe. I have 2 stepdaughters. One's going to turn 21 this Sunday. And then I have a 17-year-old. Both of them are in competitive sports. They're beach volleyball players. And then we have a 9-year-old son together. So we have a connection. We're not going to be empty nesters for a long time, and we know that. But it really starts with my wife. My wife is so connected to when it's time for me to work. She knows how important it is to me. She'll take on the responsibility when I'm gone or I'm at the ballpark. And it's really something that you have to have that blend and know what's important. But family is huge to us. And we feel very fortunate to have 3 healthy and loving kids, and they are passionate what they do. And so is my wife, which does exercise fitness. She does nutrition segments on a local TV station for over 20 years. So all of that comes in our family dynamic that is really done because of her.
Well, like we talked about earlier, you're no stranger to this podcasting game. You've got your own podcast called Major League Beginnings. It's such a cool approach because you get all the different perspectives, of the agent, the player, and the broadcaster. Mm-hmm. So what influenced you to get into that space?
It's interesting. My good friend Barry Axelrod and I came up with this idea, and it was a book idea first. And the reason why we wanted to do it, he is represented so many great players, and Jeff Bagwell, Biggio, Phil Nevin, Wally Joyner, so many guys, and they all have their stories, but their best story is really their call up. And we talked about this that's the story that I think some fans missed, or it's never been represented, because that's really when their journey starts. Even though the minor leagues has a lot to do with building up their awareness of how good they're going to be in the game of baseball, until you get that phone call and saying you're going to the big leagues, or a AAA manager or a AA manager tells you you're going to the big leagues, that's when your story starts. So that's where it started. And Bridget, we've had so much fun because all the people we've had over 50 episodes. Everyone is very unique, whether it's traveling challenges, getting to their first big league game, talking about their first hit, their first home run, a lot of firsts. And what I love about this, and you probably heard it in this broadcast, there's so many people to thank. There's so many people that have been mentors to these players, in All-Star and Hall of Fame players, that got them to where they are now. Their stories are very evergreen to a lot of listeners. So we thought this would be a different thing. It's not a podcast where you hear details that are happening, the current details, which I think is very unique. But it's a competitive space in podcasting. I absolutely love it because it's a passion of mine. I remember my call-up story, but I also love hearing everyone else's. And I love hearing why they were an all-star, why they were a Hall of Famer. And it has everything to do with other people that make this game of baseball great. We don't just have players either. We have sideline reporters. We have Kim Ng, the general manager, who is an incredible story for the Marlins. There's a lot of people that entail the game of baseball that we love getting on because they also have great, tremendous stories that we like to listen to.
Well, for those who are interested who haven't been able to listen yet, where can they find it? When does it come out? Give us all the details.
Well, thank you. We are on all podcast platforms. You can go on Google, Apple, so many things. We are part of the Believe network, so you can go Believe, or you can go on MajorLeagueBeginnings.com, our website. It can get you to all the episodes. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a really good listen. Typically, we're about a half hour to maybe even an hour. The former big leaguer Sean Casey, who's on the MLB network, I always say, listen to his first because you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll have so many emotions, but you'll also hear the beauty of what Sean Casey's all about. There's so many great stories, though, Bridget. But all you have to do is go on your podcast, search for Major League Beginnings, and it's an easy listen. But we have over 50 episodes, so you can have so many different listens.
Great for your road trips. Great for the summer. If you've got road trips planned, just turn on Major League Beginnings.
Right.
Well, we're always looking ahead to the next thing, it seems like nowadays. So what else do you hope to accomplish in your broadcasting career?
You know what? Just trying to get better and enjoying it. I am very blessed to be able to do this. This is our 10th year, as I mentioned. And my connection with Mike Pomerantz and being able to evolve. We've had the ability to see the struggles of the San Diego Padres, and now they're a team on the rise. So we get to talk about Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado, Blake Snell, Yu Darvish. This is infused talent into San Diego, and we're excited because that doesn't promise you a World Series championship, but it gives you an opportunity to watch spectacular players every single night. And we get to broadcast that. We get to go into those living rooms and the TVs of our viewers and be able to describe what's going on. I'm just blessed to be able to be around everybody, and I'm looking forward to continuing that. And if someone taps me on the shoulder, says we're done with you, it's time to really accentuate my family, because that's what my passion is.
Well, I'm excited to keep watching you kill it. I mean, I love watching your things on Whiparound and on Fox Sports San Diego when I see little feature stories and stuff. So I'm just excited to keep watching you rise.
Oh, Bridget, thank you so much. And you know what? It's not about me. It's about everyone else. I am so thrilled that you are doing what you're doing. When we met at Fox Sports, I realized that that's the passion that you have. And that's what everything drives you. If you have passion for what you're doing, who knows what's going to happen? I'll tell you this. I had a young Laura McKeeman, who is now Laura Rutledge, who is killing it on ESPN. And so is Chris Budden, our sideline reporters. I think it's great that you have opportunities to go out there and do what your passion is. So I wish you nothing but the best, and I know you're going to kill it because you know the game inside and out, and you have the ability to connect with listeners and viewers.
We're going to round this out with our last segment called Quick Hits.
Sure.
It's 5 lighthearted questions for you. Do you think you have what it takes?
I hope so, but typically my mom would probably be the only one that would agree with me. So let's do our best.
They're pretty easy. So first
Okay.
question. What are your top 5 favorite ballparks?
Wrigley Field starts, Fenway Park, because I grew up in Boston. I absolutely love San Diego Padres Petco Park, it is absolutely gorgeous. San Francisco is so unique. It has the ability to be new, but also have that throwback. And the Pittsburgh Pirates is my top 5.
All right. Question number 2. What is your favorite thing to do on an off day?
Golf. I absolutely love to golf. I'm not good at it. I should be much better because I'm playing a lot in this pandemic. I played a lot and my game's not getting better. But man, I love being able to be in a group of 4, going out and just enjoying your day.
I always see you and the Whiparound crew out there on the
Right.
course. See the updates on Instagram.
Right. Right. We're getting Kevin Burkhardt into the game. He didn't like it at first, but now he loves it. We set the hook for him.
Question number 3. What is the most memorable moment from your playing days?
Probably going to the World Series in 1998. I think everything is done through your team, and we had a great team in 1998. We beat the Atlanta Braves, who had John Smoltz, Maddox, and Glavine. They were tremendous. Obviously, Chipper Jones was there too. A great team. We went to the World Series. We ended up getting swept by the Yankees, who were incredible. But that was a moment that I'll never forget.
Question number 4. What is a hidden talent of yours?
Oh boy, I would like to say singing, but that is far from it. Hidden talent. I like to cook, and I enjoy cooking. So during this pandemic, we had a lot of family meals, and that is where I think you connect as a group. I absolutely love to cook.
All right. Question number 5. Did you have any superstitions when you were playing, and do you have any now before broadcast?
I didn't have many superstitions, but when things went right, whether it was team or individualized, I tried to do the same thing, whether it was eating the same restaurant, jumping over the foul line, all of those little things, but nothing that was so specific, like a Nomar Garcia Parra back in the day, where he had certain routines that he had to do. I just enjoyed what I did. Now in broadcasting, I just don't want to. The other day, I was doing a broadcast in a pre and post game show, and I forgot to put my makeup on, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Now I'm gonna look shiny. My head's gonna be all shiny, and I just gotta do. I gotta know my routines, and that's really what I do.
Well, Mark, it was so great catching up with you today, learning more about your journey and the transition into the broadcasting industry. And I so appreciate you coming on the Rise.
Oh, Bridget, I am so thrilled that you asked me to do it, and thank you so much. And I wish you nothing but the best in your career.